Springfield's Talk 1041, and hello, everyone. My name is Nick Reed. Friday, we have the Friday Road Show sponsored by Shirley's Heating and Air, and it is a Heroes Breakfast as well. Is it
That's
not?
right.
Yes, that's right. So if you're a veteran and you come out and join us at Scramblers on Friday, then you're going to get free breakfast. So how about them apples? Delicious. Delicious apples they are. Want to also mention a couple of great escape things for you. I know some of you that are regulars that at least have said that you plan on going have not gotten your stuff in well, I guess gotten your stuff into CAM yet. I wouldn't wait on that. I spoke with her yesterday, and we have about 2/3 of our reservations filled.
Ooh.
Yeah, and we just announced it last Thursday, and they were closed on Friday, and so I mean it's moving at a pretty good clip. She also told me one of the things that we talked about is there is the ocean view room, and then what's the other one called? Garden
Like
view or
garden
jungle
view?
view or something
Yeah.
like that. And she's twice already had to call the resort in order to shift our reservations to a larger number of ocean view rooms because a lot of you are wanting that. You know, she sort of predicts whenever she makes the reservation. Fortunately, the resorts are pretty accommodating when they're able to be, and they have been able to be accommodating. So she didn't say that we were out of the ocean view, but that might be a reason if you have a preference to do this sooner than later, given that about 2/3 of the reservations are already fulfilled or already filled rather, and those ocean views are very popular. And twice she's had, I don't know, when I talked to her yesterday, I didn't ask how many were available, but the fact that those do seem to be the popular pick, then I would not wait. I would definitely get it set today. Now you may think, oh gosh, but you know, come middle of summer, which by then it's going to be way too late anyhow. But you're like, well, you know, we might have this pop up or so forth. If you buy the insurance, then you can cancel the day before. You can cancel on the way to the airport and get your money back, minus the insurance, of course. That's the point of the insurance money. And so I just recommend that you do that. In fact, we had some people on the last trip that had gone ahead and they made the reservations and paid in full, and they had the insurance and they were going to cancel and decided not to because they thought, well, we have the insurance, and it was a couple of months in advance, and so we don't have to cancel until the day before, and they ended up being able to go. So you can't uncancel, but you can, you know, always cancel. And that's just one of the benefits of having that insurance. We have the details at ksgf.com. It's going to be beautiful Cancun. It is on, if you look at the photos of the resort, which I'm going to have to learn to say the name properly, Kukulkan, I think. And what did she say? It means something,
Oh, I don't know.
spirit of the serpent or something.
I think it's Kukulum.
Kukulkan. It has 3 Ks in it, if I remember right.
The whole
Because
show,
I spelled it out. I had to spell it out a couple of times.
the whole live broadcast of us down there is
I
gonna
know.
be us just trying to remember how to pronounce the name.
have to really
the whole show.
really well. I think it was the first Great Escape that we were on, and I mean we were almost all the way through the first show before someone told me that I was saying the resort name completely wrong. I'm like, well, why'd you wait until now to tell? It
Right?
may have been Cam that told me, like, you know, it's actually this. I may have said the wrong name. I don't. It was off enough that I had to be corrected. So it may have been a pronunciation, or I could have just flat out had a totally wrong word or name in there. But you think about the things that you can spend money on in life, and you can buy TVs or hot tubs. You can do these different things that, when you're at home, they're going to be somewhat enjoyable. But you're not going to 10 years from now be looking back and remembering what it was like when you bought it, or remembering all of the wonderful memories that you had watching that TV. But you will when it comes to this experience on A Great Escape. And so
It is a feathered serpent god.
Oh, okay. Feather serpent.
Yes,
Yeah.
and it's pronounced
Kukulkan.
Kukulkan.
Oh, see? Kukulkan. Kukulkan.
Kukulkan.
Kukulkan.
That's what Google Translate says.
When I sent the script to our voice guy, I recorded a number of different people giving reviews off of YouTube just to have the different because I didn't know if he knew. I always try to do that. Like, hey, just in case you're wondering how this is pronounced, this is how these people said it, and they seem to know what they're talking about. So that's what I had to do, just because I didn't know. But it's absolutely beautiful. It's a Ryu line of resorts, which is what we went to for the first time last time around, and just absolute top notch. So do not wait. Again, 2/3 of them already. We just opened it to the public last Thursday, and 2/3 of our reservation slots are taken up. And twice they've had to renegotiate the rooms because not price wise, but everyone's wanting those ocean views, and so twice Cam has called, and they've accommodated shifting some of the garden view over to the ocean view. Point being, don't wait. You don't want to miss out on it. All right, we've got weather coming up. Also, yesterday, RFK Jr. making a lot of news, doing what it was that he had indicated that he was going to do and that many people wanted him to do, and that is dealing with petroleum-based food dyes. Now, I can't wait to see how it is. I'm assuming that all of a sudden the left is going to fall in love with food dyes. Food dyes are going to be absolutely wonderful. We'll probably start hearing about the food dye industry and, here's Marta, who has worked in the food dye industry her entire life, and she's raising her grandkids, and what is her life going to look? Oh, she doesn't know where her next paycheck is going to come from because Donald Trump and all of his MAGA anti-science freaks are going to take away her job because of this attack on the poor food dye industry. I can't wait to see how the left takes up this cause as they have MS-13. I mean, or do they love MS-13 more than food dyes? I suppose we're going to see as this plays out. Latest news update.
And the first alert forecast from Ozarks First meteorologist Tom Schmidt, sponsored by St. Clair of the Ozarks Home Improvements. Today we'll see partly sunny skies with a high near 80. Tonight mostly cloudy with a low around 58. For your Thursday, we'll see a 70% chance of rain throughout the day with a high near 76. And looking ahead to Friday, showers in the afternoon with a high near 76.
FDA announcing major Make America Healthy Again shakeup. FDA Commissioner Marty McCary on Tuesday announced plans to ban artificial food dyes from America's food supply by the end of 2026. Health and Human Service Secretary Robert F. Kennedy Jr. indicated that his agency would pursue this move shortly after Trump nominated him, saying the FDA is taking the following step. This is McCary during a press conference. Number one, establishing a national standard and timeline for the food industry to transition from petroleum-based food dyes to natural alternatives. Number two, initiating a process to revoke authorization of synthetic food colorings, including those not in production, namely citrus, red, number two, and orange B within the coming weeks. Number three, taking steps to eliminate the remaining 6 synthetic dyes in the market from the U.S. food supply, specifically red dye number 40, yellow dye number 5, yellow dye number 6, blue dye number 1, blue dye number 2, and green dye number 3 by the end of next year. He explained the agency is requesting food companies to remove red dye number 3 sooner than 2027-28 deadline previously announced. Quote, these steps that we are taking means that the FDA is effectively removing all petroleum-based food dyes from the U.S. food supply. The official noted that many U.S. food manufacturers have been extremely cooperative and that there are many people in food manufacturing delivering on the needs of the American people, and they have done exactly what we have asked them to do. Markey further stated that if we can get beyond the tribalism in our society, rampant in our culture, we will realize that we all want the same thing. This is, of course, part of Kennedy's Make America Healthy Again initiative. The FDA currently allows 36 food color additives, including 8 synthetic ones, according to the Washington Post. Public pressure to eliminate these substances has mounted over recent years over concerns about their impact on children's health. The FDA previously indicated the totality of scientific evidence shows that most children have no adverse effects when consuming foods containing color additives. However, Kennedy has argued that dyes amount to letting food companies mass poison children. Critics suggest that HHS should focus on more pernicious health risks such as tobacco and alcohol. Food dyes are an important cause of morbidity, but I don't think that they are by a long shot the largest cause of chronic disease in the country, said Peter Lurie of the Center for Science in the Public Interest. Now, I'm not a big believer that this is something that government should be dictating. I'm a big believer in transparency. There is an ingredients panel. People know that these things are they know that they're there. I'm just a big believer in letting people make informed decisions. This is my take on it. That you've got a company that says, hey, we got this product, here's what's in it, do you want to buy it? And then people are like, yeah, or no, I'm not going to buy that because it's got red dye number whatever in it. And I'm not going to put that in my body. I know I'm overly simplistic. That's just how I see things, human beings. Just, eat what you want, drink what you want. It's just... You want to eat shards of glass, knock yourself out, have at it. That's between you and the person that sells you the bag of glass, as long as you're fully aware of what that bag of glass is going to do. I also am somewhat skeptical as to how much of an impact these different food coloring additives actually have on children as a whole. They may very well. But yeah, I don't know, you just got to forgive me for not necessarily trusting the FDA, trusting the CDC. After all this COVID stuff, I just don't believe these people. Now, I know, of course, you can find studies that say that they have unintended side effects. I also learned from COVID that you can get companies or different industries that do research projects to say anything. That doesn't mean I don't believe it. Of course, I also think that one of the approaches can simply be, listen, if it ain't natural, I'm not going to eat it. And I know a lot of people live that way, and there's a spectrum. Some people are just absolutely 100% strict about it, that if it is not a natural whole food, then they're not going to eat it. They just won't do it. All of these additives, all of these things that if I don't know what it is, if I can't pronounce it, I'm not going to do it. And then, like I said, there's some that, this whole thing, I imagine that there's some people that will pick up a box of cereal that has 82 different ingredients, and they'll just scan through looking for red dye. And they'll pass over all these other words. They have no idea what it means. They don't know whether it's good, it's bad, but they've heard that this is bad, and so they're going to go with it. And again, people should be able to do whatever it is that they want to do. I, I've oftentimes heard people note how, young people today and how the behavior of younger people today is so much different than it was 30 or 40 years ago, and oftentimes try to attribute it to all of these additives. And I just don't know that, well, I tend to think that that may not at least wholly be true. I think the way that we raise our kids today, culturally, has much more to do with it than whether or not there have been artificial dyes in food. Again, that doesn't mean that they're good and that you should ingest them or that kids should ingest them. But sometimes I feel like you look at the problems. Look at all these kids of the Minecraft movie that, they don't listen. They're throwing popcorn everywhere. Look at the disciplinary issues in the schools. I mean, I do think that it's somewhat humorous that a lot of people who are 100% behind banning dyes out of food are against banning cell phones in classrooms, which I can all but guarantee you is much, much, much more damaging, cell phone usage for kids, than having dye in your Fruit Loops or Trix cereal in the morning. Again, I can't declare that with pure scientific approach, but you just really, if you observe behavior and timelines, I mean, listen, I grew up at a time when, as best I remember, cereal was brightly colored and it had these dyes in it, and as did my generation. And my generation doesn't have the same sort of behavioral problems that generations after mine do. And it seems as if it just increasingly, as you get further and further back, or get younger and younger, the problems get more and more prevalent. And I think some could argue that even 20 years ago, some parents were much more aware of these dyes and more particular about what it was that they fed their kids than even during my generation. And so I just don't think that that correlation stands up. But again, I'm not going to pretend as if I have some deep scientific knowledge of this. I do firmly believe that if a person put absolutely nothing in their body other than what you would call just a whole actual food, that you are on average going to be much better off and much healthier than a person who puts in their body things other than that. But I also don't know that it's the boogeyman to the extent some people want to make it out to be. But hey, who knows? Who knows? Ultimately, I'm just a kind of simplistic guy that thinks, hey, as long as people know what's in it, they ought to be able to eat it if they want. That's just me. Though, I can't wait to see how the left is going to behave about this. I suspect they're going to just largely ignore it. But it would be somewhat humorous to see some on the left do what their initial reaction is to everything that comes from the Trump administration, and that is figure out why it's bad. Who's benefiting from it? Is this some Elon Musk thing? Is he going to benefit from this? What about the poor, worker that works at the dye factory? What about those people, and particularly if we're talking about people who have been imported into this country, or God forbid, people who live in other countries, if they happen to produce some of these food items that are going to be affected by the red dye? I mean, we're really going to hear about it. Is this move going to make the left a champion of artificial dyes in food like it has made them a champion of wife-beating gang members of terrorist organizations? Time will tell on that one, I suppose. Springfield's Talk 1041, I'm Nick Reed. I've been mentioning the Pinnaker Honda grand opening that will be coming up. Brand new showroom floor, April 29th, 5 to 7 p.m. Free food from food trucks nonetheless. So that's like added bonus when you're talking about. It's one thing free food, like, oh, they're going to throw a hot dog at me or something, just a plain old hot dog, and maybe there'll be some ketchup and maybe a little leftover mustard. No, it's free food from food trucks. They're going to have other fun stuff as well, including 0.99% interest rates available on select certified pre-owned Hondas. Ridgeline, Passport, and Odyssey, American made. Exclusively in the good state of Alabama. Here's something that I haven't mentioned as much as I probably should, and that is with every vehicle purchase, your first 3 months of fuel is taken care of. It's free. So how about them apples? You can jack those gas prices up all you want to, world, because 3 months of free gas, part of a new vehicle from Pinnaker Honda, their upcoming grand opening. I'll be there. That's April 29th, 5 p.m. to 7 p.m. Somebody is about to get lucky because yesterday, I think it was yesterday, we found out that our Lunch Bunch winner for today, for Retro Metro, had to postpone it because of a personal situation. And I'm going to tell you what that is now. No, I'm kidding. I'm just really going to get into it.
We're going to give you their phone number, and you can talk to them about this.
They just had to postpone it, which, I mean, that happens.
happens.
Obviously, a lot of our winners are busy people, and things pop up. And a lot of times, they just feel so bad about it. It's cool. It's all right. This is not difficult for us to do at all. And whenever you do have to postpone it because of something that is unexpected, you make somebody very happy because then, as I'm going to do right now, is take registration for today's Lunch Bunch with Sarah and me at Retro Metro. If you win, then you get to bring up to 5 people with you. Now, I know because it's last minute, this is something that does occur every so often. You're scrambling. You think, well, this will be easy. I mean, free lunch, one of the best lunch places and dinner places in Springfield, in the Springfield area. I mean, I'm going to have to figure out who to invite. I'm not going to be able to invite everyone, but not everyone's able to just go to lunch at the, quote, last minute. And so if you aren't able to get 5 people to accommodate you, that's fine. That is not a problem at all. It can be just you. It can be 3 people. It can be 2 people. You understand the concept. So the way to get registered for Lunch Bunch today at Retro Metro is to text the word lunch to the Pyramid Roofing Company talk and text line 417-447-KSGF. When are you going to draw a winner for this?
I don't know. Probably about 8:30.
Okay, all right. So you have until then to register. Make sure that you check your phone around that time or is that around the time you're also going to contact the winner?
Yeah.
Okay. That way, we don't want you at 10:30 checking your phone oh yeah, because they open at 11. But if you can't do lunch at 11, it's 11:30 is easier, 12 or whatever. We'll accommodate that. But we do want to be able to nail that down as quickly as possible. So. We're not sitting there and then at 11 o'clock realize, oh, you're just not responding, and then we don't have a lunch bunch at all because it's lunch for us as well. And we love Retro Metro Lunch Bunch. So if you want to be today's winner, text the word lunch to 417-447-KSGF.
Springfield's Talk 1041, your first alert forecast from Ozarks First meteorologist Tom Schmidt, sponsored by Wolfpack Cleaners, your residential and commercial cleaning professionals. Today we'll see partly sunny skies with a high near 80. Tonight, mostly cloudy with a low around 58. For your Thursday, we'll see a 70% chance of rain throughout the day with a high near 76. And looking ahead to Friday, showers in the afternoon with a high near 76.
More great news for America. U.S. investment so far under Trump, just in the first, what are we at, 100 days? Do we hit 100 days? Reached more than $5 trillion and is expected to generate hundreds of thousands of jobs, according to an analysis of company announcements and reports from energy or industry experts in total through both domestic and foreign investment from 4 different countries. Various U.S. industries and manufacturers have garnered roughly $5.2 trillion in investments since January 20th. In turn, these commitments estimated to generate at least 451,000 new jobs for Americans. Some of the biggest domestic investors, Apple, SoftBank, Oracle, OpenAI, the latter 3 companies investing $500 billion in the largest artificial intelligence infrastructure project in history, according to the White House. It's amazing the difference in what investment means from this administration versus the prior administration. Anytime we heard about investment from the prior administration, that meant taking money away from you and then artificially propping up industries that, in all likelihood, would not be able to survive on their own. And that's based off of history, what we know from history. And it's not just Democrats. Now, they love that sort of thing. But, for example, one of the struggles, and there was a piece in the Federalist a few weeks ago on this, that the fiscally responsible elected officials was having with Republicans in the Senate that were joining with Democrats to try and prevent Trump from supporting these subsidies to the left-wing so-called green companies. We know during the Obama years and the Biden years, that was a very big thing. And many of those companies, they would immediately go under. They would burn through the money because they had an economic model that was not conducive to what the American people were looking for, whether it was the product itself or the cost or a combination of the two. And many times these companies your tax dollars would be used to prop them up artificially in states that would have a one or more Republican U.S. senator. And so they talk big about doing away with all of this wasteful spending that's basically throwing money down a rat hole in many instances. And it, again, is proven to be that way, particularly with so-called green energy. But, that person is an influential person in the state, and there's some jobs that are dependent on it. So they pick up the phone, and they're like, hey, you got to make sure we keep this tax dollars, flowing to us. And that's how you oftentimes, and most recently had a number of Republican senators that have been pushing back on saving Americans those tax dollars. So it isn't something that is owned completely, that fiscal irresponsibility and subsidizing these massive corporations owned completely by Democrats. So Republicans do oftentimes fall into the fray as well. But the Obama years and the Biden years, every time they talked about investment, it was you so-called investing against your will. It was the government taking or borrowing money that your great-grandkids are going to be responsible for, and then giving it to the CEOs of companies that, lo and behold, were also financial donors to their campaigns. It's just amazing the coincidence that you would see with that sort of transaction. When we hear about investment under the Trump administration, it's not you being forced to pay for something. It is private industry that says, hey, this new landscape we're looking at, we think that this is going to be pretty good for us, so we want to invest money. Isn't that a nice difference? And isn't that kind of what the left claims that they want? That they want corporations to, give back, to do their fair share, and not to be dependent on hardworking middle-class Americans to be propped up. there is hypocrisy all across the board, but particularly when it comes to the left and this portrayal of these massive corporations that, especially when it comes to the oil industry, that are getting tax breaks on the backs of hardworking Americans. What do you think all these green initiatives are? Well, you think those aren't massive corporations? And the difference between an oil industry when they get some sort of tax incentive, it isn't that they're paying no taxes and all of a sudden they're then receiving taxpayer dollars. It simply means that the tax laws have been set up in a way that allows them to pay less taxes. But that isn't how it is so often for these green corporations. They pay no taxes and then they get taxpayer dollars on top of it. So essentially they get welfare. These big corporations, these CEOs are multimillionaires living the lap of luxury. And we're told that that is the model that the left hates. Well, then you should love what Trump has been creating here. Because when it comes to investment, it's not you and me subsidizing these corporations out of our paycheck. It's the corporations that are doing it themselves. Wouldn't you think that that's something we could all agree upon, that is a better way to do it? And then if the company goes belly up, you and I, we're not out anything. We don't still, that's the thing about these companies that go belly up, we still have to pay for it. It's not like, oh, well, I guess it won't cost us anything because it already did. They burned through our money. This should be, and this is part of the problem with Trump derangement syndrome and the tribalism and this feverish hatred for Donald Trump and oftentimes Republicans, things that clearly everyone should be happy about. Other than, I suppose, the millionaire fat cats who are living off welfare from the American working person. But other than that, we should all be like, yeah, this actually is the best way to do it. We're not out anything. And jobs are being created. Plus, this company is, instead of taking taxpayer dollars, is paying taxpayer dollars into the Treasury. All of these employees are also paying taxes. Plus, the money that they're earning out of the private sector, they go spend that money at businesses, which helps those businesses. This has winning written all over it. This really is a no-brainer. But unfortunately, because of the hatred that the left and the media has created around Donald Trump, they would rather see corporate welfare. The left would rather see corporate welfare under someone who isn't Trump than see the reversal, and instead of corporate welfare, corporations investing in American jobs, because Donald Trump is responsible for that. That's not right. Springfield's Talk 104.1, I'm Nick Reed. Sarah Myers, everyone.
Thank you. Foreman Mechanical Heating and Air. We're kind of in that weird in between spring weather where you probably have the AC on during the day and probably everything turned off, or maybe even the furnace on during the evening. And whether your air conditioner just isn't working the way that it should be, maybe your furnace is in need of repairs, or you want to improve your home's indoor air quality because, tis the season for allergies. Foreman Mechanical Heating and Air are the go-to guys for all of your HVAC needs. They offer residential services, they also do commercial services, and they do understand that emergencies, they can just pop up whenever. So they also offer 24/7 emergency service lines as well. And they're also hiring. So if you are looking for a great company to work for, make sure to reach out to Russell. And of course, for all of those HVAC needs, you can schedule your appointment with Russell and his team today, and you can find all of the contact information for Foreman Mechanical Heating and Air under the Sarah's Endorsements tab at ksgf.com.
There is a podcast host by the name of Sam Fragoso, and the podcast is titled Talk Easy with Sam Fragoso. And the feeling of it is just that. The personality of the host is kind of a soft-spoken, seemingly laid-back, comfortable podcast host. Now, he's also like a journalist, and I don't know that he's ever really necessarily worked for any one paper or magazine, but his stuff has appeared in the normal left-wing stuff like NPR and Variety, and he's a film director as well. And so he has this podcast, and he's a left-winger. Elizabeth Warren recently sat down on this podcast and demonstrated why it is that podcasts do not work for Democrats. And I will play. Now, I want to note that the difference between this podcaster, who is left-wing, and other podcasters that may be left-wing is he is one that demonstrates through this interview of his a genuine curiosity about things. And so he asks questions not to make Elizabeth Warren look good, but because he genuinely wants answers. And through the interview, he asks questions, it's very clear he thinks Trump's awful, and that, Democrats are the way, the truth, and the light. And it's the big question that Democrats have, given how clear it is that Trump is a bad guy and Democrats are wonderful. Why isn't we aren't winning elections? And so he gets into this conversation with Elizabeth Warren. And again, this is exactly why it is that Democrats cannot be successful in a podcast setting. This is an excerpt from that interview.
2023, after the midterms, the Democratic Party says, look at this. Look at how we outperformed. This is a referendum on Trump. This is actually an indication that people want Joe Biden. They made a connection that is not true, grounded in no reality. Now, 2 times, in 2016 and 2024, both of the times we lost, the Democratic Party has opted not to change. Now, we switched to Kamala Harris, obviously, but that was about 6 months too late. Why is the Democratic Party so slow to pivot? We have so many talented people. Why can we not get past our past?
So I want to give an answer to a different question.
Of course you do. It's
Of
because
course I
I
do.
because I asked the question.
Of course.
You love to reframe every question.
I do. It's one of my superpowers.
You love to do this, but I'm asking you to answer my question because we don't have that much time left.
I know, and I'm going to run out the clock here.
I'll walk out.
Okay. I don't want to. For me, this isn't about looking backwards because it just isn't helpful unless what we're answering is, are we going to do any better going forward? Have we learned a damn thing?
No, that was my next question.
Okay, good. So I'm just right there with you in that question.
Okay.
And that is, we're learning, but slowly.
Okay. Do you regret saying that President Biden had a mental acuity? He had a sharpness to him. You said that up until July of last year.
I said what I believe to be true.
And you think he was as sharp as you?
I said I had not seen decline. And I hadn't at that point.
You did not see any decline from 2024 Joe Biden to 2021 Joe Biden?
Not when I said that. You know, the thing is, he was sharp. He was on his feet. I saw him live event. I had meetings with him a couple of times.
Senator, on his feet is not praise. He can speak in sentences is not praise.
All right. Fair enough. Fair enough. Look, the question is, what are we going to do now?
Okay.
To sort of pick up why it is that Democrats, the podcast venue is not a venue that they're going to succeed in.
That was just painful to listen to.
Oh, you should watch the visuals of it when he asked I think it was the question specifically about do you believe that you're as sharp as he was, or he was as sharp? What a great question, by the way. What a fantastic way to frame that question. Because if you say yes, then what does that say about you? Because here's the thing that she knows. Everyone knows that she knew. Because everyone knew. And so here is a left-wing podcast host who I think his delivery is fantastic because he's the perfect combination, actually. He asks real legitimate questions in a way that require an answer. He holds her feet to the fire, but he has just a very soft, friendly, genuine way of doing it, which sort of you can lull a person into thinking, well, this guy's nice and friendly. But the look on her face when he asked that question, it's almost as if she forgot that they were being videoed and sort of signaled to him, I cannot believe that you're asking me this question. And that's when you heard the long pause. So those visuals are equally important. But to answer his question, that is really much more simple than the left thinks. And that is, why is it that the Democrats are so slow to pivot? Because the Democrat Party is no longer responsive to the voters. They're just not. Once upon a time, they were. During my lifetime, they have been. And I think probably the starkest example was during the Clinton years and the midterm shellacking that Clinton took, which isn't unusual for the party in power, but he did a very noticeable pivot. And he began working with the 104th Congress led by Newt Gingrich, and he made what made a lot of left-wing Democrats very angry. They felt he was compromising on their principles, but he pivoted because he recognized this is what the voters want. The Democrats don't care about that anymore, and I just don't know how much more plainly it can be. Look at issues like deportation and illegal immigration, pornography in elementary schools, transgender sex change surgeries for kids, forcing girls to compete against boys and take showers with boys in the locker room. These are all things that even a majority of Democrats are opposed to. They don't care. Their position is the only responsibility they take is the belief that they just haven't done a good enough job making sure you understand why they're right and you're wrong. And they've said that. Now, they don't say we're right and you're wrong part, but they, we just failed to communicate effectively about our successes. That means that in their minds, you are just stubborn, and again, a majority of Democrats are against them on many of these important issues. And you're just wrong in their minds, and they will beat you over the head until you comply. Look at how the Democrats' last presidential candidate was chosen. They moved the calendar around so that Joe Biden couldn't have any serious challengers, which is why RFK Jr. dropped out as a Democrat, because they were rigging things and wouldn't even allow him to be part of a debate, so he ran as an independent. Then, because of that debate, it became very clear to the voters that they had been lied to by the Democrat Party, so the Democrat Party just tells the voters, okay, now this is the person that you're going to support. It's a one-way relationship with the voters. And the reason that the Democrat Party doesn't want to pivot or refuses to pivot is because they just are not in there. They are not there to represent you. They are not there to be a reflection of you. They are there to tell you this is how things need to be run. And even if hell or high water, 80% of Americans are on the opposite side, we don't care. So why would they pivot? As usual, the projection here of claiming that Donald Trump is this arrogant fool that will do anything regardless of how many people are opposed to him doing it, and he doesn't represent the people, that messaging comes from a party that consistently takes a position that 80% of Americans are opposed to. Springfield's Talk 104.1, I'm Nick Reed. All right, Little Mermaid is going to be at Landers Theater April 25th through May 11th. Coming up Friday, 10 a.m., you can buy a $50 gift certificate towards those tickets for only $25 at KSGF.com. Coming up Friday, we have our Heroes Breakfast. Now, the Friday Road Show at Scramblers, sponsored by Shirley's Heating and Air. But then we have breakfast for veterans. Yes, indeed. This is for all you vets. Come out between 6A and 9A as we're broadcasting live, and you're going to get yourself some free breakfast. So how about that? Yeah. Also, we've got the a last-minute opening up of our lunch bunch for today. Our winner had to postpone for a couple of weeks, and so that's good news for one of you. If you want to join Sarah and me at Retro Metro for lunch today, text the word lunch to 417-447-KSGF, and that will be your entry by 9 o'clock or somewhere around 9 o'clock this morning. If your name is drawn, then Sarah will contact you, so be sure to check your phone. And if you win, then you and up to 5 people of your choosing can join us or will join us for lunch. They open at 11, but we can accommodate your schedule. If you need to be there at 11:30 or whatever time you normally do lunch, then we can work around that. No problem at all. But you got to text that word lunch to 417-447-KSGF and then be available for lunch today at Retro Metro with Sarah and me. And if you can't, get round 5 people up, sometimes it's not as easy as people think it would be because people's schedules get busy. Don't worry about it. It doesn't matter. You don't have to have 6 of you in total with you and 5 of your friends, but just as many as you want to bring or can bring. So how about that? And then also, I'm packing a lot in here. Yesterday, talked with Cam at the travel group. Thursday, we announced and opened up the details of our Great Escape. Reservations are already 2/3 booked. And the 2 options that are part of the standard package, the Ocean View option and then the Garden View option. The Ocean View option has been the clear favorite, and so twice already, Cam has had to call and switch up the number of available Ocean View room available. Now, I don't know if she'll be able to do that again if those once again sell out, because they've twice now sold out. And the resort fortunately had some available. I don't know, again, if those continue to sell out, whether she will be able to, it's just going to depend on what the resort has available. And point being is I wouldn't wait. I would go ahead and call her and reserve your slot. If you've not been on one of these, the experience is so worth it. For under $2,000 for a Garden View room per person, I mean, that covers a high-end resort, all-you-can-eat food, all-you-can-drink non-alcoholic alcohol if you want. The airfare is covered in that. The tipping is covered in that. The taxes are covered in that. I mean, you leave your wallet and you're safe in your room, and you don't have to take it out again until you leave if you don't want to. It is just such an incredible experience, and I can't imagine that you'll regret it. So I hope that you join us. Cam already told me that there are some people who haven't been that have signed up, and those are some of it's on one hand, love the regulars because we just have it's a get together. It is a little, and how awesome is it that there's like people that we see once a year, and it's in Jamaica or Mexico or Dominican Republic. That's generally the time of year that we get together, and there aren't many experiences where you can say that oh yeah, I've got these friends, we get together about once a year in Cancun or Jamaica, right, or Dominican. That's not something that is standard. And so to be able to have that experience is just great. It is fun. It's a really good time. But I do at the same time love people who have never been before, because it's just, they always have such a fantastic experience. And especially those who have never been to an all-inclusive. That's a double fun time, because you get the part of it that is, if you want friends there with you, though you can be off and isolated by yourself, but everything's laid out, it's planned out in terms of getting there and getting back. You can do what you want when you get there, but you just don't have to worry about the flight, and then what happens if something goes wrong with the flight, because Cam goes with us. She's take care of it. How are we going to get to the resort? And then if we want to get off site, and what if we want to do a catamaran, because that's something we always arrange for KSGF listeners. That's just such a fun part of it. You're just absolutely going to love it. It's a fantastic time. And the details are at ksgf.com. The rotating tile there, it's, I think, second in line.
I think so.
So you can click on that and then get Cam's contact info, and she will get you all set up. NPR has a story. Hundreds of scholars say U.S. is swiftly heading towards authoritarianism. Well, of course. This is NPR, the news organization that just a few weeks ago, laughably, before Congress testified, well, we're not biased at all. Well, sure, we have zero registered Republicans in our newsroom. They're all Democrats, with the exception of like 4 that consider themselves to be independent. But no, we're able to give completely unbiased news. Oh, by the way, Trump is sliding us towards authoritarianism. And these are the same political experts, I'm sure, that had noted that Trump could never win in the first place, and that Trump was going to be a dictator the first time around, and then he wasn't. And these we're into the world of the left where they present to us a person that they say, oh, by the way, this is an expert, so don't question it, because they're an expert, see? And so that means whatever they say is correct. What about this expert that's disinformation over there? No. Our experts are the experts that you listen to. None other. And certainly don't share others on social media, because we will do everything we can to shut you down. Latest news update.
And the first alert forecast from Ozarks First meteorologist Tom Schmidt, sponsored by St. Clair the Ozarks Home Improvements. Today we'll see partly sunny skies with a high near 80. Tonight, mostly cloudy with a low around 58. For your Thursday, we'll see a 70% chance of rain throughout the day with a high near 76. And looking ahead to Friday, we'll see showers in the afternoon with a high near 76.
On our Hardscapes and Outdoor, custom landscape installation tailored to your lifestyle, outdoor living space design, paver patios, retaining walls, sod insulation, garden bed construction, drainage solutions, landscape lighting, sound ambiance if you want, water features, you name it. This is the sort of premier design and product and installation that is there to last. That definitely is clearly a cut above than what is oftentimes done in a standard way. I recommend you go to the site, you check out some of the work that they've done. I look forward to eventually going to have a patio installed by Hunter Hardscapes and Outdoor, and showing you the before and after pictures, so that you can get a sense of what it is that I'm having done. But you don't have to wait for that, obviously. You can go to the website and see some of that. Fantastic people. They're just the sort of people that just in daily life, particularly the owner, he's a bit of a perfectionist, and that trickles down to all of the work they do. You can visit them at hunterhardscapes.com. That's hunterhardscapes.com, or at ksgf.com under Nick's endorsements. This real ID compliance thing, I could continue to. This is a big countdown. And there's this continued misreporting that the only way you can get on a domestic flight after the deadline passes is to have the real ID. That is not true. You can have a passport. I don't know why this is so difficult for the media to get straight. It isn't that hard. But as I see, and I'm watching, they have up in Michigan, for example, on the Today Show, a line of people outside their DMV, if that's what they call them in Michigan, waiting in line because people are waiting to the last minute. And all of these people are waiting in line in order to comply so that they have their papers so that they can travel around the U.S. Wouldn't it be nice if Americans, when it comes to the real ID, were treated the same way that Democrats expect people who come into this country illegally without any sort of papers were treated? Wouldn't that be fantastic? You think about how upside down the Democrat Party has things, and even the mindset of people in this country, where if you have Americans standing in line for hours to comply with getting our papers with this deadline, but then, at least during the previous administration, literally millions of people coming into this country illegally saying, I don't need papers. How dare you expect me to have papers? You have Americans, elected Americans, to office in the Democrat Party that characterize the need for people who come into this country illegally to have proper papers as if that is some sort of horrific crime against humanity. Yet then right after that will be a story telling Americans, you better get that real ID by the deadline. If you don't get that real ID by the deadline, you're going to be in trouble. This is going to cause real trouble because you have to be compliant. You will not be able to travel across this country. You won't be able to go to nuclear facilities. I love how they throw that one in as well, as if like someone's going to be like, well, I'm not worried about, I can't go to nuclear facilities. Oh, well, I better get this real ID. But you can't go into federal buildings. I mean, it's just this insane upside-down world in which we see the perspective of the elites in this country, that if you are somebody, think about you could be an absolute law-abiding citizen, never done anything wrong in your life, and they are telling you you had better get that real ID, otherwise that there will be consequences and you're not going to be able to travel around the country. You want to go to your grandchild's graduation, you're going to have to miss that. Otherwise, you got to get it. But then they turn a wife-beating gang member of a terrorist organization into some sort of cause. A guy who's had 17 different court appearances. He's had more due process than probably the vast majority of Americans have ever had, and the left is still tripping over themselves to celebrate his cause. Do you think that there will be stories if there are people who refuse to get the real ID and because of that, they aren't able to travel with their family on vacation, or they're not able to go to their daughter's wedding, which is in another state, or maybe they missed their grandma's funeral? Do you think that there will be these sob stories that the media portrays because of the real ID? And that these are the implications of forcing Americans to comply with having their papers, and simply because so-and-so didn't have their papers, they had to miss the funeral of their grandmother. Of course they won't. Because you're expected to comply in ways that people who come into this country aren't. I mean, and we've all seen the sob stories. I mean, they desperately, they try to find them. Half of them, there's one I'm going to share later. It's just hysterical because the media tried to portray somebody that was being detained as the only person in the world that could read some sort of results of cancer test research. And so they literally have portrayed this woman as somebody who may be the only key to solving the cure for cancer, and the Trump administration has locked her up. Well, of course, like all these stories, it turns out she was trying to smuggle samples into Russia, and so apparently kind of a bad person, or at least doing something she shouldn't have been doing. And so, yet, it's another narrative that blows up in their face. But when it comes to getting that real ID, let me tell you something. And you know how they would characterize anybody who says, you know what, I'm not getting it because I think that the federal government is going to use that in order to track me in ways that are unconstitutional. You will be labeled by the media as some sort of right-wing conspiracy whack job that is out there spreading disinformation. You're probably some sort of racist who's off the grid. But boy, if you were in this country illegally and a couple restraining orders against you for beating your wife and you were a gang member, they would hold you up as some sort of icon that needs to be defended, all in the name of the Constitution. Do we not recognize how screwed up that is? Even those of you that are Democrats, do you not get it? Sadly, I think some do. And this is the thing about humanity that oftentimes people don't want to recognize. There are people who want to be controlled. Sometimes in individual relationships, sometimes it manifests itself in sex clubs where they go and to get tied up and get beaten by, they're the sub, the submissive one. And there's just something about some people, they want to be told what to do. They want to be controlled. And so that mindset with some of these people doesn't matter to them. In fact, they kind of like it, I think. Springfield's Talk 1041. I'm Nick Reed. Pyramid Roofing Company talk and text line. I remember after 9/11, we had to have all that documentation to get my driver's license renewed. Plus, I had to get a certified copy of my birth certificate from the state in which I was born, plus my marriage certificate to verify my name change. This is one of the most aggravating detachments from reality that we experience, and it's in media coverage. And the left has been successful in assimilating people into this mindset that, they'll talk about how barbaric it is for people who are in this country illegally, or even people who are legal. They have documentation to say that they're legal, that they should have to carry that around. What is this, Nazi Germany? Oh, but if you don't want to have papers from the DMV, or you don't want to have to go get your birth certificate or a social security card in order to get your or whatever sort of paperwork, you're some anti-government nut job. You're some right-wing nutcase that wears a tinfoil hat around. And I think that there are a lot of Americans that their knee-jerk reaction is that the left's and their totalitarian narrative that they've got, and their push of compliance and control has been successful, that people that aren't necessarily leftists, they're not authoritarians or totalitarians, but when they hear talk about somebody in this country that is on a visa having to show their papers, I mean, that sounds like Nazi Germany. Oh, I got my renewal license orders. I got to go down to the local government headquarters in order to pay to get my papers to carry around. Be sure to keep that in your license or in your glove box at all times in case you get pulled over by government authorities and you have to show it. The success of the left creating that divide where people don't realize that they are instinctively feeling sympathy for people who are in this country illegally, that may have to show, or legally rather, as a legal, on a work visa or something, feel sympathies for them because they have to carry some sort of identification, but it doesn't even cross their mind that we as Americans have to do the exact same thing. This is the real problem I have, well, one of the real problems, with the left portraying all of this stuff as some sort of a violation of human rights. Like, why should I, as an American, have to do things that people who come to this country that aren't American citizens don't have to do? I have yet to hear any explanation, not even an attempt at one. Another text message. I flew this past weekend, and the TSA agents were telling everyone who did not have a real ID that they had until May 6th to get one, or they couldn't fly. That's called disinformation. As is noted in the latter part of the text here, a traveler had to correct the TSA about the ability to use a passport. Then they acknowledge that, well, yeah, you can fly without a real ID. Some of these folks who work in government, and even though they have become so comfortable with lying to people, it gives you real insight into their mindset that you and I are just these peons that need to follow orders and not ask questions, and so it doesn't even faze them to lie to you about stuff like this. Let's get a traffic update. Springfield's Talk 105. Oh, I want to. Did you think I was going to forget this?
I kind of did.
I didn't forget it. Let me pull it up here. I want to get this all correct. A shout out to Wyatt Womack, 8th grade Fairgrove, running the 1600. You better not fail this thing. That's my message to you. If I'm going to go to the lengths that your father has expected me to go to encourage you live on air for everyone, you better not fail this thing.
That's awesome for him.
Which part, my threat?
No, for Wyatt.
Yes. That is a very cool thing. And I'm just kidding, kind of, sort of, about the threats there. So good luck. I'm sure you'll do fantastic.
Springfield's Talk 1041, your first alert forecast from Ozarks First meteorologist Tom Schmidt, sponsored by Wolfpack Cleaners, your residential and commercial cleaning professionals. Today we'll see partly sunny skies with a high near 80. Tonight mostly cloudy with a low around 58. For your Thursday, we'll see a 70% chance of rain throughout the day with a high near 76. And looking at Friday, showers in the afternoon with a high near 76.
Kayla recently said the following about Emily Johnson, House Theory Realty. Working with Emily was an absolute pleasure from start to finish. We had the opportunity to buy, both, and sell properties with House Theory help, and each experience exceeded our expectations. Their deep knowledge of the market, strategic insight, and keen eye for value truly made a difference every step of the way. Beyond their experience, they were a genuine delight to work with, professional, responsive, and always looking out for our best interest. And that, again, Adam, that's a common theme that you hear about Emily Johnson, House Theory Realty, whether it is a real simple, quick process. And something I've noticed, one of the reviews some time ago had noted that, we've bought and sold many, many homes, and this is by far the best experience. And so if you're somebody who's never been through the process before, Emily cannot be any better for you than she possibly is, given that it's unknown to you. But even those who have been through it many, many times, and it's run-of-the-mill for them, they learn what a step up the service is that you get from Emily Johnson, House Theory Realty. You can get all of her contact info at ksgf.com under Nick's endorsements. NPR, which is a completely 100% unbiased, taxpayer-subsidized news outlet. Hundreds of scholars say the U.S. is swiftly heading towards authoritarianism. Now, many of these scholars work on university campuses that are seeped in anti-Semitism. So right out of the bag, given the fact that Donald Trump is more popular in Israel than he is in the states that he won by the greatest margin here during the last election. A lot of people don't realize that. If Israel could have him as a prime minister, he would be the easiest win, according to all the surveys and polling done in Israel. Now, you may not be familiar with much of this because clearly the mainstream media is not going to do any polling where they know that it demonstrates that not only is Trump not a Nazi, but he is the greatest, most pro-Jewish president we've ever had in this country. So given that these scholars, many of which reside in cultural atmospheres that are the most overtly anti-Semitic in the United States of America, that by itself, might not be the best grouping of people to judge somebody that is so pro-Jewish and pro-Israel. The survey of more than 500 political scientists finds that the vast majority think the U.S. is moving swiftly from liberal democracy towards some form of authoritarianism. In the benchmark survey, known as Bright Line Watch, U.S.-based professors, what a shock. What a shock. U.S.-based professors rate the performance of American democracy on a scale from 0, complete dictatorship, to 100, a perfect democracy. What does that even mean? After President Trump's election in November, scholars gave American democracy a rating of 67. Several weeks into Trump's second term, the figure plummeted down to 55. John Kerry, a professor of government at Dartmouth, said that's a precipitous drop. And co-director of Brightline Watch, continuing, there's certainly consensus. Oh my gosh, are you kidding me? So we've got consensus and experts here that we're supposed to listen to. Do you folks not realize that you have chewed up all of your credibility, both in labeling people experts when they are consistently proven wrong? And the people know that consensus doesn't mean that you're right. Simply because everyone has a hive mindset and is compliant in one singular thought pattern does not mean that they are scientifically correct. That's not how these things work. Kerry said the decline between November and February was the biggest since Bright Light Watch began surveying scholars on threats to American democracy in 2017. In the survey, respondents considered 30 indicators of democratic performance, including whether the government interferes with the press, punishes political opponents, and whether the legislature and the judiciary can check executive authority. Not all political scientists view Trump with alarm, but many like Kerry who focus on democracy and authoritarianism are deeply troubled by Trump's attempt to expand executive power over his first several months in office. So the framing of it from NPR is that, well, not all poli-sci scientists understand that Trump is to be viewed with alarm, but those who focus on democracy and authoritarianism, they get it. That's literally the framing from NPR, the completely non-biased, non-political organization here that, again, you and I helped fund. Steve Lizitsky, a professor of government at Harvard, you know, the university that is willing to give up billions of dollars to continue to be a cesspool of anti-Semitism. Yeah, that university. Said we've slid into some form of authoritarianism. It's relatively mild compared to some others. It's certainly reversible, but we are no longer living in a liberal democracy. Now, how can it be reversible? Because were we not all told that the election of Donald Trump would be the last election we ever had in this country? That it would be over. How many times were we told by experts, the election of Donald Trump would be the end of democracy as we know it? So this is a weird contradiction to have one of the, a political scholar cut from that same cultural cloth tell us that, well, it's still reversible. Oh, is it now? I'm sorry, which political party changed the election calendar in order to make sure that Biden did not have any real challengers during the primary? Do you know that the only reason, legally, that nut job was able to take Trump to court, in which he was found not guilty of rape, was because the Democrats in the state legislature passed a law lifting the statute of limitations for 1 year, which coincided with the election cycle? They literally changed the law so that that case could come forward. Which political party overturned after they moved the calendar around to rig it so that Biden didn't, particularly RFK Jr., that they considered to be a major threat? They moved things around. They took away from New Hampshire at one point the votes of all of their delegates because they refused to violate their own law, which required them to hold the first primary in the country. The Secretary of State had to send cease and desist letters to the Democrat Party because they were sending out mailers telling people there was no point in voting because it wasn't going to count anyway. Which was the political party that once they realized that the candidate they rigged the election for wasn't going to pull it off, and so they just said, that one doesn't count. Here's the new person you're going to support. Her name's Kamala. She's the same broad that just up until a month ago, we were encouraging Biden to dump off the ticket because of how bad she is as a politician and how bad she's been as vice president. But we're now telling you that she's wonderful and you're going to believe it. Which party did that? We're talking about authoritarianism here. Which party tried to imprison political opposition? 4 different jurisdictions in this country, all at once, and waiting until he was running for president? Not until he was running for president did they decide to do all of that. Wasn't just Trump. Steve Bannon, former advisor to Trump, went to prison because he did not comply with the congressional subpoena. Of course, he's not the only one. Among others was Merrick Garland, the Attorney General of the United States. The exact same offense, and not a thing happened to him other than there was an impeachment, and then in the Senate, the Democrats said, nah, we're going to ignore our own rules, and we're not even going to bother to have a trial. James Comey, by his own acknowledgement, used a fake dossier paid for by the Hillary Clinton campaign that was developed by a foreign asset. You want to talk about foreign interference in our elections. The FBI falsifying evidence so that they could keep spying on Trump, falsifying the evidence before a FISA court. And then the attorney for the FBI that did it and admitted it got a slap on the wrist. Didn't go to prison. The FBI threatening social media when it came to what they deemed to be disinformation, knowing that they had the Hunter Biden laptop and that it was legitimate, but calling, getting on the phone, emailing people within social media world, telling them, oh, by the way, there's going to be some Russian disinformation coming out about Hunter Biden, so you best not be spreading this disinformation. We might have to do something about that. We're supposed to believe that that wasn't totalitarianism, but Trump, who has been a champion of the anti-censorship movement, is? Of course, then the CIA releasing the disinformation letter, falsely claiming that it was Russian disinformation. Democrats on a large scale successfully pushing social media sites to disappear people off social media that didn't comply with COVID or simply ask common sense, scientific-based questions regarding the effectiveness of masks and why 6 feet and not 7 or 5. Anyone who noted in the beginnings, yeah, we don't know that this COVID vaccine actually will prevent the spread of COVID. Those people were disappeared off social media because they were spreading disinformation. Of course, it turns out they were right. Ran a disinformation campaign claiming anyone who said that COVID may have come from a Wuhan lab instead of Chinese people eating bats was spreading dangerous disinformation. Anyone who openly asked, hey, should we really be giving blank checks to this Zelensky guy who has canceled elections, banned political opposition, and shut down newspapers? Should we really be giving him just blank checks without any oversight? Which political party deemed those people to be spreading disinformation and puppets of Vladimir Putin? Not to mention, just yesterday, the Supreme Court, listening to arguments from Democrats that not only should elementary school children be given pornography, not just in the written word, but in illustrations, but that parents have no right to say, no, I don't want my children to have that. That's the argument that they were making in the Supreme Court yesterday. And apparently, upon actually seeing the material, even left-wing judges like Kagan were taken aback by how pornographic it was. I mean, you just go on and on. Oh, but the experts, the political science scholars on the anti-Semitic university campuses in this country all have come together in a consensus that Trump is the one who has slid us into authoritarianism. Okay. You don't have the best track record of telling the truth and or judgment. Springfield's Talk 1041. I'm Nick Reed.
Keeping our nation.
The Pyramid Roofing Company talk and text line. A text regarding this piece in the completely unbiased NPR. They went to university campuses, which are the most culturally anti-Semitic areas of concentration in this country, and then decided to get an opinion from so-called political scholars about the most pro-Jewish Israel president, Donald Trump. And surprisingly, as the left-wing activists that they are, they say, oh, he has slid us into complete authoritarianism, or he's getting us there. And what's interesting about it is this was a rating scale, complete dictatorship, a 0, 100, perfect democracy. And one of you rightfully noted that, you know, these being political science people should know that we're not in a democracy, we're in a republic. And that's the first red flag that these people should not be deemed experts. Now, I read through it, and sometimes when I'm reading an article in which they talk about dangers to democracy, you know, people, and I know that's not why this person's pointed it out, but they're, you know, almost frustrated. And I've had people come up to me off air and be like, you know, I really wish that you would make sure to point out that we're a republic, not a democracy. I mean, when I read through an article, for example, like this, I mean, every single time I don't, because of the redundancy of it. But if I am truly a political science scholar and I'm asked to do a survey to rank us on, you know, on the bad end dictatorship and on the good end democracy, I'd say this is a completely false premise. I'm not going to take this survey because pure democracies can operate just like a dictatorship. It's whatever the majority wants, gets to dictate. You don't have any rights. You know, your life and your freedoms are completely dependent on the whim of a majority of the people that get to dictate what your rights are. So any so-called political scientist or scholar that really, truly, genuinely has a respect for our form of government and liberties and freedom would never even participate in this in the first place, because it's a complete farce. You have no more rights and freedom, or I should word it this way. Your human rights, your liberties are no more respected in a pure democracy than they are in a dictatorship. Because much like a dictatorship, yeah, you can have a benevolent dictator. Yeah, he's pretty cool. Doesn't, necessarily go after political opposition. It's not like Kim Jong-un, which there's only like 7 different types of haircuts that are legally allowed to take place in North Korea. Not too bad. Until the dictator decides to. And that's the same thing with a pure democracy. So anyone who doesn't recognize or understand that, first off, wouldn't be taking this survey in the first place. But the real test here is recognizing that none of those 100 or however 500 political scientists should be teaching people on a university campus, because they don't understand the significance of our form of government and how it relates to actual liberty and freedom. Springfield's Talk 1041. I'm Nick Reed. Pennsylvania Governor Shapiro, who was passed over for the vice presidential nominee because he was Jewish, and that is a real problem within the Democrat Party, has told reporters that Trump called him after that fire attempt to burn down his home, the governor's mansion, which you haven't heard much about. They found out he's kind of a left-winger, the guy who did it. So given that he's not a Trump supporter, nothing to see here. But he talked just about how completely kind and gracious that Trump was, and was genuinely curious about how his family's doing and how he's doing. So I guess we better start ripping on old Shapiro now, like Bill Maher's been ripped up and down, left and right by the left, right? We can't humanize Hitler, particularly when he's expressing such care and compassion for somebody who's Jewish. News in 60 seconds. Springfield's Talk 1041. I am Nick Reed. Welcome to the show. The Great Escape 2025, announced and open to the public on Thursday, has, as of yesterday, 2/3 of the reservations taken up, and there's been some moving around of what rooms are available because there's been a lot of folks who have wanted the ocean front or the ocean view as opposed to the garden view. It's a couple of hundred extra bucks more. Clearly, though, that is something that is worth it to a lot of people. And twice now, Cam, who is the one who takes care of all of this for us, she has had to call the resort, and they were accommodating enough to work with her to shift some of our rooms from the garden view to the ocean view. So point being is, if you prefer the ocean view, I would definitely, if that's something you're going to want, get in touch with her today. I don't know how many more opportunities there will be for her to work with the resort should there need to be an expansion of those numbers. I just don't know. So if you're going to do it and you just haven't done it yet, go ahead and set that reservation up. Final payment's not due until July, so you have several months in order to make the payment. You don't have to do all of that up front, and Cam can go over all that information. Her contact info you can find at ksgf.com under the KSGF Great Escape, the big rotating tiles there. That is where you will find it. I think it's the second one that rotates through. And just click on it. You can get all the details. I'm telling you, it is just an incredible time. And for the amount of money to get the direct flight there and back, and your taxes covered and tipping covered, and it's all inclusive. So we're talking about all the food you want to eat, room service is covered, your mini bar, clean that thing out 80 times over if you want. All of that stuff is covered. It's just an incredible time, and if you've never been to an all-inclusive resort, no better way to do it than this. So you can either just be isolated by yourselves or know that the people who go on these great escapes will be more than willing and just happy to welcome you into the fold and keep you in the loop on things if you want. No better way to go on a trip like this than to join us for the Great Escape. And again, the details for the November trip at ksgf.com, including the fact we do the show while we're there for 3 days. And anyone who goes on the trip will be more than welcome to be part of the show. There was a movie that opened over the weekend called The Wedding Banquet. Are you familiar with this? It was advertised as a big wide release, and it did not do very well at all. It opened in 1,142 theaters and made just a bit over $922,000, which is not a lot. Listen to this is a description of the movie, and to me, it sounds as if it is an AI-generated movie description for what would potentially be one of the most ultimately woke films to be released at any given time. And this is the description from the movie itself. Tran leads the heartfelt rom-com as Angela. Tran is the actress. Leads the heartfelt rom-com as Angela, a scientist who is 1/4 of a cohabitating queer friend group living in Seattle. Angela and her partner, Lee, want to start a family, but Lee's costly IVF treatments aren't working. Another couple, Chris and Min, live in their garage. When Min's wealthy grandmother pressures him to leave his artist life behind for an important role in the family corporation in Korea, Min scrambles to find a way to stay in the U.S. given that his student visa is about to become invalid. His plan, stage a marriage to Angela to secure a green card, and he'll pay for Lee's IVF treatment in return. First off, it's a little bit complicated for a...
There's a lot going on
There's
there.
a lot going on there. I just trying to keep up with... Now, wait, what is going on
They really
here?
jam a lot into an hour and 43 minutes.
I think I would just say crazy hijinks of 4 queer couple people or whatever they are and just leave it at that. But it's... I know why. Because usually movie descriptions are pretty simple, right? This one, it's hilariously overly complicated, but that's how the left they are. They just are insistent on you like fully knowing and accepting and understanding exactly what this is now. You have to understand every point. Now, we got cohabitating queer friend group here. You have to know that we're going to be preaching at you about IVF treatments and student visas and, these poor students that just want a better life and the trials and tribulations of having that visa revoked or expiring. And so we got to figure out a way around the system to get a green card. It's like they hit every... this is going to be the most preachy movie. And I guess you have to at least give them a head, or a head nod for giving people essentially a warning ahead of time, just so you know, this is going to be a very, very preachy film. Now, in their minds, I think that they imagine this is what will draw people in. And, of course, some it will. But largely, it's the sort of thing that, as a movie distributor, you're like, what, are you out of your mind? It's just shocking that it didn't do much better than it was
Now,
supposed
wait a
to.
minute. Rotten Tomatoes gives it
Oh,
an
yeah.
89%.
Well, so this article points out that they're like, was it hurt by bad reviews? Nope, 88% fresh at Rotten Tomatoes. Then the next line is critics love this blank, because they do. Rotten Tomatoes, you really have to learn to read, because sometimes you'll find that the critics hate something and then the mass audience loves it, or vice versa. And usually, if that's like if the critics love a film but the audience at large doesn't, you can all but guarantee it's woke. That it's left-wing preachiness that just never lets up and just spends an entire 90 minutes or 120 minutes making sure you understand who the privileged people are, who the oppressors are, who's good, who's bad. And on the flip side, oftentimes with the Rotten Tomatoes reviews, if the critics give it essentially a thumbs down, it's got like 20%, but the audience really loves it, then it's probably just a fun movie that is exciting, has mass appeal, like Top Gun 2 or something like that, and they just look down upon, it's just so pro-America and all the average American and flyover country. This is a sort of film that they like. This is meant for those people, not the critics. So you have to really learn how it is to read the Rotten Tomato reviews. It doesn't surprise me it's at 82%. Or 88%, rather. All right, and now for that particular one, the moviegoer review is 82%, but so few people saw it, that the people, and this is where the review comes in, that a vast majority of people who saw it, they knew what they were getting into, and this was a preaching to the choir, look how important we are, because it, they connect to it in one way or another. Either they are part of a queer friend group or cohabitate with three others, they're polyamorous, or, they're going through green card situations, and so because it validates them, it's going to have a disproportionately high number of positive reviews, because anyone who's not into that is going to read that review and go, yeah, I don't know, not going to see that one. Latest news update.
And the first alert forecast from Ozarks First, meteorologist Tom Schmidt, sponsored by St. Clair the Ozarks Home Improvements. Today we'll see partly sunny skies throughout the day with a high near 80. Tonight, mostly cloudy with a low around 58. For your Thursday, we'll see a 70% chance of rain throughout the day with a high near 76. And looking ahead to Friday, showers in the afternoon with a high near 76.
In the 6 a.m. hour, if you missed any of it, you can listen to it. Podcast section at ksgf.com or the app, Spotify, iTunes, and played an interview with is a Democrat podcast. She's like a director. I wasn't familiar with him, but Elizabeth Warren sat down and had an interview with him, and he was asking, why is it Democrats aren't able to pivot when we lose, and ask a really great question about, Joe Biden, and are you still telling us that you couldn't tell something was wrong with him? And the way he framed the question I thought was great. Do you still believe that you're as smart as he was, or as with it as he was? And she didn't know how to answer the question, of course, because she just instinctively lying is her mode. And but I noted that that's why it is podcasts do not work for Democrats. Because when you're talking about a long form sit down discussion, it has to be engaging. And by the way, there's scientific research, if one even needs it, to know this stuff. But when your brain is provided, if you really are curious about things, and you hear questions that make you go, oh, that's an interesting way to think about it, and then you hear answers that are different than what you may have thought of, or what it is that you have heard over and over and over again, and they're answers that make sense, that stimulates the brain in a way that is engaging. And it's reasons why podcasts like Joe Rogan or just a whole litany of others are successful, because it's not that they're polished. It's not that they're professional journalists. It's because they're just asking genuine questions that a lot of people wonder about. And a lot of people maybe hadn't thought of themselves, but were like, oh, wow, that's a pretty interesting question. I hadn't thought of it. And it's why people like Donald Trump or J.D. Vance or others did really well with the podcast, because they were willing to sit down for 3 hours and ask or answer any question. And you throw in there the fact that a lot of people, particularly with J.D. Vance, all they heard is that, he's awful and women and old cat lady and, all this stuff, and Trump is an idiot. And for the first time, they're actually listening to a conversation. That's something different for the brain, because that's not what we've been told. And so it makes that stuff very engaging. It's new, it's fresh, it's causing your brain to be activated in a way that it's not always utilized. When Democrats sit down to do podcasts, they just say the same stuff over and over again. And so it's repetitive. There is no engagement. And it's one of the reasons that they are not successful in a podcast form. Now, the minute that they do say something that isn't repetitive, they get attacked for it. Gavin Newsom is a prime example of this. When it came to acknowledging that, it's not really fair to force girls to compete against boys. And even though as governor, he has blocked any actual protection of girls, just the mere fact that he said that and said something different, the left turns on him. And it's why, while the left sits around and grapples with, why can't we have a Joe Rogan? Why can't we have a this, a that, a podcast? Well, because what you are offering is not what makes podcasts successful. And when it does happen, like that interview with that podcaster with Elizabeth Warren, it goes off the rails, because you are not supposed to be asking me these questions. These questions are out of compliance. Rainn Wilson has a podcast, I guess pretty much everyone does. And, I don't know if, this is his podcast. It's called Soul Boom, SOULBOOM. Are you familiar with this podcast?
No.
Yeah, I didn't even know he had one. I had no idea.
I'm sure I'll be disappointed.
Well, you may not be.
Okay.
Now, Rainn Wilson, he's kind of a lefty. He's never in any interviews or comments that he's made.
On his social media, he's made a couple of pretty lefty comments out there.
I've never, in the ones I've read, felt that he was sort of this crazed, mean lefty as much as just a genuine lefty. He has said things that I think demonstrate he is in touch with reality. For example, the lack of any sort of respect for religion in Hollywood. That's something that most lefties would actually see as good and virtuous, but he didn't necessarily see it that way. So he's like maybe a Bill Maher, is an independent thinker, just wrong a lot of the times. He sat down with MSNBC host Stephanie Ruhle, and they were talking about, and he brought up the issue of the fact that increasingly people don't trust the media. They feel that they are either incompetent or just straight up lying, and so they can't be trusted, and wanted her thoughts on it.
Even in the last 2 weeks, what we need to do is just cover what's happening in America, right? We have to cover Democrats trying to figure out what their lane is and how they're going to get back on their feet. And we have to simply cover what this White House is doing. And I think if we do that, right, there's that saying, trust is gained in raindrops and it's lost in buckets. And it's not yes, you're not incorrect that the media has lost trust.
This is where I would push back. When I see this kind of insight and passion being directed at the current administration, and the lack of this kind of insight and passion being directed at the previous administration, where, again, I'm not talking about you, I'm talking about left-leaning news media organizations were kind of like, la, 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 everything's fine. Look, the environment's, look, the economy's great, la, 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 immigration's not that much of a problem. And really being Cleopatra, queen of denial. Thank you. Boom.
I would push back on immigration. I can specifically remember when Greg Abbott of Texas and Ron DeSantis of Florida sent those buses of migrants to different cities, different parts of the country, which ended up being politically genius for both of them. Mm-hmm. The media regularly talked about the fact that Biden was not doing enough in his first 2.5 years on immigration. Even though in the last year and a half, you're seeing the numbers go down, he just wasn't doing enough. And you saw it in how people voted, right? You had places like the Bronx, you had places like New Jersey, people who said, I'm not happy with immigration in this country. And that's why Democrats are scrambling to recalibrate now. But I do think that was covered.
All right, now a couple of things, and some of which she is spreading disinformation. The assertion that, well, in the Bidens, towards the end of the administration, the numbers were coming down. Well, that's because they were diverting them to port entries. So that this was deliberate. The number of people coming into this country illegally did not go down, but at the border, they were going down, and that's because they diverted them to port entry so they could say, oh, look, we're cleaning up the border. So it was done for the exact purpose that Stephanie Ruhle of SNBC is doing their bidding here, either ignorantly or deliberately, and that is using that in order to misinform people about what was actually going on. It is hilarious that she cites Greg Abbott and I forget if she specifically said DeSantis or not, but shipping illegals in buses to Democrat-run cities. And how, well, we covered that. We were all over that. That's the reason that they did it was to force you to cover it. Because of the absolute refusal of the media to accurately cover what was going on at the border and to claim that it was completely secure and to use the talking points from the Biden administration. That's when Abbott, and then DeSantis as well, they came up with the ideas. All right, well, let's see you ignore it when it's in New York and when it's in Martha's Vineyard and when it's in these places of liberal, utopia, because they also knew that the left that talks about how we should openly embrace these people, they don't want them in their backyard. And so they knew that there would be a reaction that the media would not be able to ignore. The fact that she cites that instance as if, well, we were covering that. Yeah, that's why they did it. It was to force your hand. And I'm sure most of you recall, it wasn't covered in the context of, or the lens of, oh gosh, boy, this really is a big problem. Boy, the Biden administration really is screwing up. The borders are. Kamala Harris didn't do her job. It was about how awful DeSantis and Greg Abbott were. You may recall at one point, they were openly talking about, reporting the fact that DeSantis could be charged with kidnapping or human trafficking.
To that point, I pulled up an MSNBC article. This is the first line of it. Texas Governor Greg Abbott unveiled a new plan that would effectively use migrants as political props to push his anti-immigrant agenda.
So here she's trying to rewrite history in order to salvage any sort of credibility and claiming, oh, no, I specifically remember. I love the word specifically, too, because it makes it sound like she remembers one instance. Like, now, I remember one specifically. We talked about this. But her rewriting of recent history as if their coverage of it was in the context of what was actually going on in the reality of it, when, to Sarah's point, just pulled up an article, and it was about how the evil Abbott was just using these migrants in order to make political points. That's the media today. And this is, to some point, Rainn Wilson's, what the point that he was making. And I think he also demonstrated here that you can be a leftist and still be objective. And that's what he did. As somebody that, again, I don't know he's ever been self-declared, but the things and positions he's taken in the past demonstrate that he is somebody that has a leftist ideology. But he noticed, he laid out a fact. And that is, as a liberal, when I see or saw the media, watch them today with this level of passion that they go after Donald Trump and his administration, but that level of passion was completely lacking with the previous administration. And instead, everything's wonderful. The border's secure. The economy's just fine. That's fact. That's reality. That is what actually happened. And this is where the media and some within the Democrat Party lose people that are more moderate Democrats or objective Democrats. They are philosophically Democrat in their belief system, but they still believe in fairness and they still try to identify things that are objective, and they really still do that in order to get to the truth. They see through this. And whether that was that podcaster with Elizabeth Warren or Rainn Wilson, they're pushing back on Stephanie Ruhle of MSNBC, it's a demonstration of that divide within the Democrat Party itself. Springfield's Talk 104.1, I'm Nick Reed. All of those home loan needs, the Carrickers, their team, iwantagreathomeloan.com, reverse mortgages. What about refinancing? Do you have to have 100% equity in your home for a reverse mortgage? What about a HELOC? You know, you're thinking about getting a new vehicle maybe, or you're going to have a new roof put on, and you don't necessarily have the cash and savings, and so you're looking to borrow it in some capacity. A HELOC could be an answer for you. And obviously your financial institution can answer you the questions in terms of, oh, well, here's what that looks like. These are what your payments will be. This is how long the term is. But the Carrickers and their team can talk to you about what that does to your credit, whether or not that is the best move for you financially to make. They are there as resources, informational resources, which is so important because then you're able to make those decisions as educated as possible. And then they're there to help you through that process as well. Home buying, whether it's, straight up loan 100% or refinancing or reverse mortgage. iwantagreathomeloan.com because you do. Oftentimes they join us out at Scramblers this Friday, of course, the Friday Roadshow, and it's a Heroes Breakfast. We've got our 3-hour broadcast there, 6 to 9 a. And if you're a veteran, you come out, you're going to get free breakfast, Delta Roofing, Air Services, Heating, Cooling, Plumbing, Electrical, Warrior's Journey, incredible organization, and Scramblers, of course, all chipping in order to buy veterans breakfast. That is this Friday, 6 to 9.
Springfield's Talk 1041, your first alert forecast from Ozarks First meteorologist Tom Schmidt, sponsored by Wolfpack Cleaners, your residential and commercial cleaning professionals. Today we'll see partly sunny skies throughout the day with a high near 80. Tonight, mostly cloudy with a low around 58. For your Thursday, a 70% chance of rain throughout the day with a high near 76. And looking ahead to Friday, showers in the afternoon with a high near 76.
Right, some of the latest when it comes to the Democrats specifically turning a wife-beating gang member of a terrorist organization into some sort of martyr. Elected Democrats are organizing in El Salvador to free the MS-13 gang member. Representative Robert Garcia, Democrat, California, says Democrats are organizing here in El Salvador to ensure the release of 29-year-old Kilmar Abrego Garcia, despite allegations that he's a member of MS-13, a domestic abuser, and previously involved in human trafficking. Garcia, along with Representative Maxwell Frost, Democrat, Florida, Yasamin Asari, Democrat, Arizona, and Maxine Dexter, Democrat of Oregon, traveled to El Salvador this week to demand President Bukele release Abrego Garcia from law enforcement custody. Can we, for a moment, just recognize that if this were reversed somehow, and you had Republican lawmakers going to a sovereign nation demanding that the president release their own citizen prisoners, or even one of them, how that would be presented? It's called sovereignty. Donald Trump was eviscerated during his first term because he had said, not publicly if I recall, but there was a recording of it, or I don't even know if there was a recording of it. There was transcripts in which he was talking about these piece of crap countries, talking about third world countries. And the left was up in arms. How dare you? How dare you? Those are proud sovereign nations. Now those same Democrats are flying down, oftentimes forcing the taxpayers to pay for it, in order to demand that the president of a foreign country, a sovereign nation, release one of his own citizens from prison? During the Bush years, the Democrats campaigned off and on the fact that Bush is just this cowboy and thinks that America's way is the way it should be, and he can just, that whole you're either with us or against us thing, in which he was referencing the alliance of those that were joining forces with us against terrorism. And he said, you're either with us or against us, and Democrats were appalled at that. The media, how dare you tell other countries whom it is that they must ally with? Those are sovereign countries. Can you imagine if there was somebody that's an American citizen in one of our prisons, and you had elected officials from some foreign country coming and demanding that the president release our own citizens into their custody because they're claiming that they were not given due process? You'd be like, what are you talking about? Who are you? Laura Ingraham last night had a Democrat congresswoman on to talk about this and really tried to get down to the point here. And that is, this is not about due process. This is an important distinction to make because they have been, and with the assistance of the media, they've been somewhat successful in giving their followers talking points, because you see them on social media all the time. Well, I don't support him. I support due process. Now, they've used this approach in the past about a number of different issues, which was misleading. Oh, I don't support abortion. I just support the choice in very rare circumstances. Well, of course, we've learned that's not true. or I don't support what it is that that person is saying. I just support their right to say it. And of course, they've abandoned that as well. They try to masquerade their support for this horrific human being who beats his wife. According to her, I guess she could be lying. We no longer believe victims, according, I guess, to the Democrats. But that, well, it's not him we're defending. No, it's due process. It's due process. That's what we're defending. All right, so then if you dismiss the fact that he's had due process numerous occasions, I think it was Senator Kennedy that noted he's been in 17 different times he has had a due process in one capacity or another before judges and in courtrooms. Like, what more do you want? And to some degree, that is what Laura Ingraham last night was trying to get Democrat Arizona Representative Yasmini Asari to answer.
Supreme Court.
Congresswoman, were you worried? Were you worried when I know this is the progressive way of dealing with interviews where you just, I'm not trying to talk over you. I'm actually trying to get a question answered. I asked you a simple question. What process is due Mr. Abrego Garcia in the United States that you believe he has not received or could receive if he's undeported, which is the Democrats' priority, undeport him, bring him back here? What process do you want him to receive that would make you happy and feel good? Could he ever be deported?
It's very clear. The Supreme Court says return him, and in court we can have a discussion about what action should be taken.
No.
This administration admitted they made a mistake.
He doesn't matter to you.
This administration admitted that they made a mistake.
I don't think he matters to you,
Mr. Garcia.
I think
this is a fact,
political
Laura. Unfortunately, you're not sticking to the fact of the case, which is that.
Well, I know the fact.
Actually, he made a mistake.
I've been very clear on the facts. Yeah. Well, Congresswoman, if you want to come on the show, we'd love to have you back.
I believe in the Supreme Court.
But you don't. Right. But if he's, I will just say this on the show, and you can come back. Just wait. Take a breath. If he comes back, let's say he is undeported, and the Democrats are happy about that. If he's undeported, he will be deported from the United States. That will make you miserable. Correct? That'll set off a whole new firestorm, because what you care about is an illegal immigrant's rights to be here ad infinitum.
This is a union
you don't want him
member,
deported.
a person
That's
with
the
a
real
U.S.
story.
citizen, wife.
Yeah.
This is a person who the Supreme Court has said needs to be facilitated back to the United States. That's a fact.
We got it. You will never support the deportation of this individual. That is the truth. Congresswoman, we appreciate it. I do appreciate you coming on tonight.
And that's what it boils down to. They don't want due process because due process has occurred. So Laura Ingram's point here, and listen, you can easily be, I don't want to use the word forgiven, but if you don't know the full story on this because of the way the media covers it, the courts did not say he can't be deported. In fact, he was ordered to be deported. But because he is or was an MS-13 member, and because of the rival gang issue in El Salvador, Trans de Aragua, at the time, which evidently the whole, a lot of this has changed over time because this deportation order was so long ago. But that was the reason that the judge said, but not to that prison, because of his gang affiliation. Not because he doesn't have one, but because he did have a gang affiliation, that his life could be in danger in that El Salvadorian prison. So he said any other prison you can send him to, deport him to any other country in any other prison. See, I think a lot of people on the left, because they've been lied to and are more than willing to believe the lies, think that he wasn't supposed to be deported. No, he had to have been deported. That was the order. They just sent him to the wrong place. That's like if, I get picked up and arrested in the Berry County Jail, and they're supposed to send me to Greene County, but they accidentally send me to Christian County. That it wasn't that I wasn't supposed to be taken there. It wasn't that I'm supposed to be a free person. It's that they send me to the wrong facility. That's what occurred here. And so what Laura Ingraham is noting here is that if he comes back, we have to turn around and deport him anyway. So are you going to be okay with that? Notice the answer, if these people were really focusing on due process, would be yes, I would be happy with that, because that's what the courts have found. That's what a judge decided some time ago. But this isn't about due process. This is about, once again, putting people, and frankly, the worst amongst us in society, on a hierarchy that is above the rest of us as law-abiding citizens. And I wonder how many of these Democrats, I won't even say open their home to this gang member, but the next time, if you are successful and reunite him with his punching bag, are you going to take his wife in when she needs shelter because she has been on the pummeling end of his fist once again? You know, frankly, some of these national organizations that are always wanting government to step up when it comes to funding, that is to protect women from domestic abuse, where are you? Where are you? I mean, I'd be fine with you coming out and saying, hey, listen, yeah, we think that he should be brought back here to the U.S. and then deported to a proper country according to the judge's parameters. But this call to reunite him with his family, no. This is a woman that twice has had to file restraining orders because he turned her into a punching bag. And usually whenever a spouse, a girlfriend or a fiance or a wife gets to that point, it's because they've been a punching bag for some time. It's usually not the only 2 times that it's occurred. And so as a national organization that does what we can to spread awareness and protect women and children from being abused, can we stop the talk about forcing her to live with this guy again? Where are you? Springfield's Talk 104.1, I'm Nick Reed. Ozarks elder law. The days are gone. Watching this, I don't even, Netflix called Ransom Canyon. My wife was watching it, and so like 3 episodes in, I started watching it, and, not bad. Not bad. But there's this huge storyline about Cap, and Cap is played by James Brolin. And, he's about who he's going to leave his farm to and who it goes to. And then, there's this attempt to scam him, and turns out that it's his grandson that, had been separate all this time. But all of this discussion and what would end up happening at the end of the season is all centered around what his wishes are versus what the law says, what actually happens. And and there's all sorts of conflict, and it's causing this strife within family members. And that's what happens in reality if you don't have those plans nailed down. If you do not have them, done in a way by experts like the folks at Ozarks Elder Law, then you can end up in a situation like that. Now, clearly not nearly as dramatic, with virtually every woman involved being extremely attractive because, of course, it's a TV show, and all of the guys being these rugged rancher cowboys. It's a very beautiful cast of people. But in reality, seriously, you may think, oh, gosh, I don't know if I want to spend the money. The amount of money that you risk spending fighting amongst yourselves against perhaps family members that you had no trouble with beforehand, you can avoid all that with Ozarks Elder Law. Get started. Free consultation, ozarkselderlaw.com. You can get set up with an appointment. from there. NBC sob story. I followed this, and I was going to bring it up yesterday before there was an update even, just because of the headline. And I think it was an Irish newspaper about this Harvard medical researcher that was being detained by ICE. And the entire theme of the story was essentially, if you read it, you inferred that this is the only person in existence that has the ability to comb through and understand this research. So she may be the only person alive that can be the key to solving, finding a cure for cancer. And Trump has her detained. So, of course, people are going to continue to die of cancer because of this. NBC News yesterday published an article attempting to show the consequences of Trump's no-nonsense illegal immigration policy relating to researchers at the university, with the 30-year-old scientist Sania Petrova back in February, and now she is battling to avoid being deported back to Russia. So now apparently Russia's a good place again. She was supposedly on the cusp of potentially unlocking major breakthroughs in cancer. Once again, it's the same sort of theme. It turns out that she worked at Harvard's renowned Kircher lab until her arrest at a Boston airport in mid-February. She's being held at ICE's Richwood Correctional Center in Monroe, and she claims that she's worried if she gets sent back to Russia, she'll be punished because she protested the war against Ukraine. It turns out, however, that she broke multiple laws, including smuggling undeclared petri dishes, containers of unknown substances, and loose vials of embryonic frog cells, which are part of the research. Moreover, she blatantly lied to federal officers about carrying the substances into America, and messages on her phone revealed that she fully intended to sneak those items in without declaring them. So we have gone from reporting about this one person who's going to find the cure for cancer, now unable to because she was locked up simply because she has a weird last name, to she was smuggling things in illegally and lying about them. Just a bit of a different story. Sarah Myers, everyone.
Thank you. I wanted to read a review from my friends over at the Pyramid Roofing Company. Sasha wrote, "Josh has saved my life. I had a leak in my roof and he was able to figure out where it came from and he patched it. Super quick and professional. He's brave. I could never get on my roof. thank you again. 10 out of 10 would recommend for anyone and everyone in the future who needs roof help. There you go. That's what you get with the Pyramid Roofing Company. A lot of bravery and just a lot of professionalism as well. If you do find yourself in a situation where you have a roof repair that needs to be addressed, whether it is just a simple roof repair, just a simple leak, or maybe you are in a situation where you need a whole new roof, the Pyramid Roofing Company has got you covered. To schedule that free roof inspection, just head over to ksgf.com, click on the Sarah's Endorsements tab, and there you will find all of the contact information for the Pyramid Roofing Company.
I recommend once again, if you are, or even if you thought about going on a Great Escape, make this your year. Thursday, we opened it up to the public. 2/3 of it, as of yesterday, all of the reservations had been taken up. A lot of the limitations are the seats on the direct flight there. And so I just can't stress enough, don't wait. Don't think, oh, well, we've got a couple of weeks, because as this is going, it looks similar to some of our past in terms of patterns of people getting their reservations, that just within a couple of weeks or so, we will be all booked up. So the contact info for the Great Escape is at ksgf.com. And then, explore it. Any questions you may have, you will not be sorry you joined us. Glenn Beck's coming up next. I'm Nick Reed.